What's up, guys? Coach Gaglione here, and this is mic'd up session number 2. And today, it's a dynamic day, so we're going to do some conjugate curls. So we're going to do some speed work. I'm going to work up a little bit after. I'm going to kind of explain the whole process. If you're new to the channel, I'm Coach Gaglione. I've been involved with powerlifting and strength coaching for over 18 years. And I did my first strict curl meet back in the end of 2023. And I was able to muster up a competition best of 180 pounds. So this is the series to the climb for 185. So I'm going to kind of take you through my journey. This is my second session that I've recorded. Stay tuned. So one of the things I'm going to be doing on this particular day, and this could be done on a max effort day, and I would say more like for me personally in the off season, but certainly on a dynamic day, or if you have like a heavy day and like a light day, or if your goal is more conditioning, if you're maybe early in a training cycle. So we're going to do what's called Wenning style warm-ups. This was popularized by powerlifter Matt Wenning. He's a record holder out of Westside Barbell. He's now a coach, great educator, colleague, friend. So one of the things that he kind of found, especially to kind of help his bench press, was to kind of pre-exhaust himself a little bit to kind of simulate a meet. Now, in a single lift competition like strict curl, that may not be as important, but I do find there is some benefit to health, working on weak points, working on stability, and also just training different qualities at certain times. The Wenning warm-ups for me personally, I will usually drop out close to a contest, but right now I got a few months to train. At the time of this recording, it's January. I'm going to be competing in April, so one of the things is getting in better shape, get better condition so I can handle the peaking phase, the strength phases a little bit better. So one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to do a priming exercise. So this is going to be something that's going to kind of mimic the positions of the strict curl. I'm going to do a stability movement and then kind of a weak point movement. So for me, I'm going to do these high cable curls. So I'm kind of mimicking the positions in the bottom, and also incorporating my traps into the movement. So I'm going to get nice and long. So my elbows start out and then elbows come in, which is the sequence that I'm going to need for the strict curl. So I'm not going to do a full set here, but for the sake of the recording, but I'm going to do anywhere from 15 to 25 repetitions. For the stability movement, I'm going to do a lat prayer. So it's going to be important to open up the upper back, engage those lats. So I'm going to, again, really stretch my traps and lats and then contract and kind of pull in. So when we're getting toward that top of the strict curl, driving those elbows in is going to also engage those lats. So that's something we want to prime. And it's going to be primarily more of a stability muscle. And then lastly, a weak point for me is going to be my side delt. So just doing a side delt with a band. Sometimes I'll use a mini gym, which maybe I'll show at another time. But I'm just kind of showing you. So I'm just working on driving my elbows out. If you notice, I'm very internally rotated here. So again, that's a weak position for me. But that's the position that I'm going to be in when I'm in that kind of transition point of the curl. So I'm just kind of mimicking those positions. So again, with the Wenning warm-up, anywhere from 15 to 25 reps, we're going to have one exercise that's going to be a primer, going to mimic the competition lift. One exercise that's going to help enhance your stability. So a lot of times that's either your core or lats a lot of times. And then a weak point of the lift. So in this case, I'm doing something to, again, some sort of curl variation, something to engage my lats, and then something to work my side delt. So that's going to be the Wenning warm-up. I'm going to get some blood going, and I'm going to go into my primary exercise of the day. So my elbows are out, and then I'm bringing my elbows in, getting my arms nice and long. Going into my lat prayer. Big stretch, and then contract. Big stretch, and then contract. And then I'll go into my weak point exercise. Driving my elbows out to the sides in an internally rotated position. So I want to get strong in those weaker areas. All right, I'm going to do another round of that and then get to work. So I'm going to do one more round of those winning warm-ups. Again, I'm going to do that high biceps curl, bring my elbows out, bring my elbows in. I'm going to do a stability, that's going to be the priming exercise. I'm going to do the lat exercise, lat prayers, big stretch, big contraction. Again, the lats are going to help kind of bring the elbows in at the finish, and then I'm going to do a weak point exercise to kind of bring up my side delts. So big stretch, elbows out, elbows in. I'm gonna do about 25 reps there. And then lat prayers, big stretch, and then contract. So again, just for the sake of the recording, I'm just gonna do a couple and then I'll kind of finish, and we'll meet you on the curl platform. And again, I'm starting in an internally rotated position because when I'm in my curl, at that midpoint, that's going to be where I'm going to be. That transition point, so critical for the success of the lift. So I'm going to do a few more reps, warm up. So a couple of things I want you guys to just note as far as when you're getting started. Just any kind of easy bar in a wall will do. You don't need to have this kind of elaborate setup. You don't need calibrated plates. You don't necessarily need the gopher bar. But I do recommend as you get more serious, just train on the bar that you're going to compete in. All the federations that I'm going to compete in use this gopher bar. Main reason being, I would kind of use it as like an analogy, like kind of like a deadlift bar. The deadlift bar is going to be a little bit more forgiving on your lower back, put you in a better position. Same thing like with this gopher bar. The most extreme version would be a straight bar where your arms are the most exposed. Okay, and then the more internally rotated you get, it's going to be more. You're going to be more protected. It's going to be a little bit more like a hammer grip. So, the gopher bar is a nice medium. Some of the European federations have this kind of like U bar, which maybe I'll show you at some point. That's even more extreme. So there's some kind of controversy to records and stuff. But in terms of safety, performance, and all that, and then still like having a good standard for the sport, the RPS is going to use the gopher bar, and a lot of the other federations, like 100% raw, are going to use the gopher bar moving forward. So if you don't have a platform or a bench on the wall, that's okay. If you don't have stands, that's okay. But these are really helpful for kind of mimicking what a competition curl is going to feel like with your setup. And these are just from Titan, so this is a good buy. This is the gopher. This is 25 pounds empty, 30 pounds with the collars. And this is from Gopher Sport. It's the 54L bar, but I believe. But this is the one that's most often used in competition. So I'm going to do a couple of reps here just to kind of warm up. Again, I'm going to get my footing, get my grip, lock in. I'm going to do a couple of pauses, a couple of pulls to start. My forearm is kind of feeling a little funny today, so I'm going to warm up a little bit more. And I'm going to do a couple of regular reps. And then I want to explain what's the deal with these chains. Okay, so when it comes to one of my favorite topics, chain training, it's often misunderstood. So a couple of things I want to just kind of highlight, especially when it comes to the biceps in particular. You have to be very careful when it comes to flexion muscles, so things like hamstrings, things like biceps. When the muscles are kind of pulling parallel, so like if I'm doing a tricep extension, for example, I have a lot of good leverage here when my joint is 90 degrees. If I'm starting in this position, especially now, if I'm doing like a tabletop curl or a preacher curl, you see a lot of people like tear biceps on a preacher curl. Your arm is very exposed in this position, so you're getting a lot of load due to gravity. But also, the muscles are pulling parallel versus from a perpendicular position. So those are things to consider. The other things that you want to consider if you're doing things like squats and deadlifts, you're going to be more exposed in the bottom position. So even though there's a lot of talk about loading the stretch position for hypertrophy and things of that nature when it comes to maximal strength development and also rate of force development, which we'll get into, there's a lot of use case for chains. So to kind of protect yourself in the bottom position, what chains are going to do, they're going to be lighter in the bottom. And as you get into a better leverage position, they're going to be heavier toward the top where you're mechanically stronger, where those joint angles are going to close. So as I get weaker or in a more dangerous position, more precarious position, the weight gets lighter and then the weight gets heavier. The other thing that's going to do in terms of a power athlete, a strength athlete, it's going to teach you to accelerate through the entire range of motion. If I just kind of cruise to the top, I'm going to get stuck. But if I explode through the movement, then I can learn to be more explosive and kind of bust through those sticking points. Kind of the analogy I like to use, if you are trying to break a window, you don't apply force slowly into it. You're going to come at it with maximum velocity and maximum intent. So chains are going to teach you intent. They're also going to potentially save a little bit of wear and tear. It's also going to change the strength curve. That's why it's called accommodating resistance. So chain training, as you can see, can have a lot of use case when it comes to strength and power athletes. Again, heavier at the top, lighter at the bottom. If I get stuck here, it's because I'm not accelerating through the range of motion. So it's going to teach the lifter to be more powerful. So we're going to kind of work up today. We're going to do a more traditional dynamic day. I'm going to do probably somewhere around 6 working sets of triples, really just kind of working on the force velocity curve, really trying to explode through that range of motion. And then what I'll usually do, if I feel good, I'll work up a little bit. So I'll start doing triples, and then maybe I'll do some doubles and singles after. It's pretty typical, standard kind of dynamic day. But I'm looking for anywhere from 18 on the low end, upwards of 25 total repetitions for the workout. Again, with high force output, fairly minimal rest time, so I'll kind of show you guys what that looks like. I got all my weights here that I need for the day. Got this platform weighted down. These are 2.5 pound collars, so just keep that in mind. So it's going to make a starting weight 30 pounds. I got 20 pounds of chains on there. So in the bottom, it's going to be like what the bar weight is, and at the top, it's going to be an additional 20 pounds or so. So first couple of sets, these are kind of more like warm-up-ish, but sometimes I'll still count these toward my speed training volume just because it's still, in my opinion, good form practice and still kind of meets the criteria, even if it's on the low end of the percentage range. Speed work can be anywhere from, on the low end, 30 to 40%, and it could be as high as 70%. Typically, 50 to 65% is going to be that sweet spot where you kind of, again, have the maximum force output. So I'm going to start with, this is 80 pounds and 20 pounds of chains. So I'm going to do 2 triples at this weight, pretty minimal rest periods, almost like a cluster set, if you will. And if you don't have access to chains, I think cluster reps can be a really good idea. We'll probably do another video on cluster training, but essentially a cluster rep would be basically, you're basically just almost doing a full reset with pretty minimal rest in between. So that can be also a great way to work on form and force production, because that's essentially what speed work is about. It's about technique work and learning to be explosive, learning to be powerful. You're getting a lot of first repetitions, so that means you're also getting a lot of practice with your setup. And again, if you have a better start, you're going to have a better finish. So you could get a similar amount of volume. You could do 3 sets of 8. Those last couple of reps are probably going to be sloppy and very fatiguing, but if you do 8 sets of 3, you get 8 chances to practice your setup, and you get 8 first repetitions, which is super valuable for a strength athlete. So I'm going to do 2 sets of 3 in pretty rapid succession, and then we're going to increase the load. So I'm going to try to keep these in real time and make these pretty clean. Again, I'm not really worried about halting my reps today because, again, the goal is more speed on this day. And I do like to kind of pause that final rep. So if I was doing a cluster rep, I might program a certain amount of time. I might program breaths. That's good. So you could do 3 breaths or so. Having an actual timer can be really good to kind of keep yourself honest. On dynamic day, you can kind of go every minute on the minute. I wouldn't do more than 90 seconds if it's true dynamic work, but anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. And if you're training in a group setting, basically just try to set up your plates fast. So that'd be my first kind of 2 sets. Again, I'm going to work anywhere from 6 to 8 sets of 3, and then I'm going to kind of work up a little bit after that. Again, this is a little bit on the lighter end, where you might kind of, ask, should this count or not? But for me, it still warrants good speed training, in my opinion. So I'll kind of make a bigger jump here. So this would be more in line with true working sets, where the percentage is a little bit higher. I didn't kind of figure out the exact percentages, but right now, my beltless 1 rep max, my best beltless single is 165. So I'm going to be kind of working in, again, between mostly the 50 to kind of 70% range for most of my working sets. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break, and then again, take short rest periods in between these sets. So I'm kind of doing some of these additions by I'm adding the weights on the fly, so some of these poundages could be incorrect. I realized I made a little boo-boo. I misloaded myself on my down set last week, but nonetheless, we started with 80 pounds. This is now, we got 100, 110. So we have 80, 100, 110 pounds on the bar. So this is kind of getting more in the realm of true speed work. I'm going to do 2 cluster triples here, and I'll start to kind of have a little bit more of a even rest period, so you guys can see what that kind of looks like, what the pacing looks like. Again, I'm not rushing my setup. I think a lot of times with speed work, people will rush the setup, but we're trying to be not kind of dilly-dally in between sets and be really explosive. So I'm going to take a couple of breaths. Do that one more time. Kind of mentioned before, like once I kind of get to like that big plate, so once it's above 115, 120, 125, certainly 135, I like to take the weights a little bit more serious. On this day, I'm usually a little bit more fatigued going into it, because also I do a kind of a benching, like upper body day, and I do some bicep and shoulder work on Monday, so I'm definitely a little bit more fatigued going into this day. Going into my max effort day, I'm a little bit more fresh, but I'm okay with that. And eventually I'll kind of start to kind of pull back as the contest date gets closer. All right, now we're going to go up to start taking smaller jumps. We're going to put the blues on. So that's about that's about 4 sets already. So I want to do at least 2 sets with the blues on. So the blues normally would make it 115. So this is going to make the weight 120 pounds. So this is kind of getting closer towards the upper end of true speed work. And then, there's different kind of, depending on like the range and the force velocity curve, you're going to get into kind of that optimal, the maximal force is going to be kind of, again, more in that 50 to 60, 65% range. And when you get to like 70 plus, it starts to be more strength speed, which can be very valuable, especially like in a peaking phase. Or again, for me, I think that, something like strict curl, because it's on a spinally loaded movement. I think that you can probably train it heavier, a little bit more frequently, with less consequence, but you do need to be careful with, things like your wrists, your elbows, shoulders, things like that, but a little bit safer than kind of maxing out all the time on like a deadlift. So This will probably be the last kind of round where I really take short rest periods, super short rest periods, and I'll kind of increase the rest a little bit. All right, so this will be my last, as kind of true speed set, and then I might like work up a little bit, not too much, and usually on the workup sets, I might stay with triples or I'll drop to singles and doubles. It kind of just depends on how I'm feeling. But the main objective of today is form and force production. So if the bar speed or the technique starts to really falter a lot, that's usually a sign to shut down the workout, or at the very least, like, cut the reps, because again, we don't want this to turn into 2 max effort days. But ultimately, if you've ever kind of seen a lot of these Westside programs and Westside trainers, that ends up kind of like happening at a certain point, especially if you're ever kind of seeing circa max programs for the squat when the band tension gets kind of crazy. So for strict curl, I like anywhere from, if you're able to set up like 10 pounds of chain or even 5 pounds of chain for some females, and upwards, I'll use as heavy as a 27-pound chain that the Titan sells. But 20 pounds is a good place to start, I think, for most men. And then I would go like half the chain for, and this is just a simple daisy strap. I got one from Amazon. So that can work really well for both squatting, benching, as well as strict curl. So got 120 pounds in the bar, 20 pounds of chains. Pretty happy with that. I feel like I better get a better kind of grip on that one. So I'm going to wait, anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds. As you can see on this one, I actually took my wraps off because it's starting to get to a weight where I have to actually, not actually try, but I got to pay attention a little bit more. Again, we got the blues on there. It's big boy weight for me. So I'm going to re-chalk up. Forearm's not feeling the best today, but I know it's just because I've been, I did a little bit too many accessory workouts probably from last time. So this will be my last kind of short rest period set, excuse me. And then we'll kind of, when I work up, I'll usually increase the rest a little bit, at least get my heart rate down. So I'm still not going to be like resting like true max effort work, where on true max effort work, I might take even anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes and kind of mimic more of like what a flight length might be. But, so maybe it's only like 2-3 minutes rest on average, but still some more dedicated rest, and I'll probably actually bring out my timer. But I'm pretty happy with how these are moving. Again, still got to get my forearm healed, but I got a lot of time to make sure I'm 100% for April 26th. Again, this is 120 pounds, 20 pounds of chains. Not too shabby. So I just want to kind of go over some like percentages and things like that. Maybe Proplin's chart's a real good resource. I know Proplin's chart has gotten onto fire, but Proplin's chart, a little history lesson for you guys, was essentially like a big experiment done with elite weightlifters. And basically what it found was there was an optimal range, and it's like kind of almost duh, but basically the higher the intensity of the workouts, the higher the percentage, the closer you are to a 1 rep max, you didn't need as much volume. And that's kind of where Louis Simmons got the idea for like speed work and a lot of these percentages. So for example, like in a max effort session, typically you're going to do, usually singles, but it could be singles, doubles, and triples. And usually that would be up to 90%. And with 90% loads, you're typically not going to be, you're going to do anywhere from, so if you're doing 3 sets of 3, that's 9 repetitions. If you're doing, 3 to 5 singles, that's 3 to 5 repetitions. And that's kind of like a sweet spot for like a max effort workout if you're doing more repetitions than that. Again, I know there's people that do more than that, but Proplin's chart's a good place to start. If you look at things like 5x5 at 75%, at a 75% loading zone, you're looking at like 25 optimal repetitions. So things like 3 sets of 8, 6 sets of 4, 5x5, in that like 70 to 75% range, it kind of fits the bill. And then when we're looking at more speed work and strength speed training and speed strength training, just the sets and the reps are going to kind of flip. But sometimes I'll do a 5x5 with my speed work. Sometimes I'll do a 6 sets of 4, especially if that's more of a weak point, if I'm trying to work a little bit more on the conditioning end. And if you look at when I visited Louis Simmons in 2017, his picture, let me flash his pictures over here. They started to do a lot more 5x5s on speed day. A little bit more challenging, but they would use a similar load. And that last set would get pretty challenging. I also think that for upper body, so let's say you're trying to get bigger arms and shoulders for the strict curl, or maybe you're trying to get bigger chest or triceps for bench, a 5x5, 6 sets of 4. Jan Blakely, he was a great bencher too. He would do like 6 sets of 6 and progressively overload that. So there's a lot of different variations that you could do. But on your lighter day, whether it be a dynamic day or a repetition day, doing something of like 25 to 30 total repetitions is kind of a good place to start. And then if you're doing like a heavy day, anywhere from like on the low, for peaking in strength, anywhere from 3 to 5 repetitions is fine. But most of the time, if you're just kind of working on a heavy day or just general strength, like anywhere from 5 to 15 repetitions. So 3 sets of 5, 2 sets of 5, 3x3, 5 sets of 2, those sorts of things. Dan John's another good resource. But a lot of times success leaves clues, and you kind of see these kind of workouts and sets and rep schemes kind of pop up. But just make sure that these are periodizing. So like for right now, so like on this particular day, again, I'm going to have to write it down when I'm done, but I might do like 6 sets of 3 and then 3 sets of 2. We'll kind of see like what ends up happening. And then I'll kind of wave the intensities and maybe the chain weight. And on the max effort day, like I kind of mentioned in the last video, I'm kind of waving. I'm doing triples, double singles, triples, double singles. I'm kind of doing 3-week waves. The speed day, I'm kind of going a little bit more by feel based on my recovery. So this is going to be more of intuitive training. I don't necessarily recommend that. But for example, if you want, so the other thing I've kind of done with some of our athletes and some of the athletes that are kind of competing in the Arnold this year, like their speed day might be doing more cluster reps, not as much chain work, just to work on their technique, a little bit more specific variation. They might do 8s, depending on like the loading scheme, they might go 8x3, 6 sets of 4, 5x5 with a similar weight, or it might go in reverse where we do 5x5 at a lighter weight, 6 sets of 4 at a lighter weight, at a heavier weight, and then 8 sets of 3 at a heavier weight with a bigger range. So, but again, we're looking for those like 25 to 30 kind of total repetitions on like a lighter day. And on the heavier day, again, we might work up to a top set and a down set, or we might just do straight sets, or we might do, just a couple of heavier sets. So there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat. But anyways, I'm going to kind of go into this next set. So we got 130 pounds on with 20 pounds of chain. So at the top, this represents pretty close to like a last warm-up weight. So I need to be a little bit more conscious of accelerating through the top range of motion. And again, not just cruising to the top. That's where the chains are going to teach you to be more explosive. Again, we got 130 pounds on the bar, 20 pounds of chains. Pretty happy how that's moving, so we'll probably do a couple sets there, and that'll be kind of good for the primary movement of the day. So I think I'm gonna, this is, so the 120 pounds, just kind of going back to for the actual speed work, the 120 pounds of like my beltless max is a little bit over 70%, so that's like a little bit on the high side. But in terms of my absolute max, like my best ever performance, it's about 65%. So that like kind of makes me feel good that I'm getting stronger, getting more efficient, as far as how the bar is moving. Again, a lot of this you have to kind of, it can be confusing with using RPE and velocity. I think that you want to use some sort of objective measure, like percentages, like tracking your velocity. There's different devices you could do with that. The technology is getting better with that. And also some subjective measures like RPE and reps in reserve. But kind of understanding where you are in your training process, and also understanding the intent of the day. So just because a certain weight should, in theory, move quickly, if it doesn't, if that's your intent of the day. So 120 pounds is about 72% of 165, which is my beltless max. And it's about 65% or so of 180 pounds, which is my all-time best. So that was kind of like right in line with where I should be. Obviously, this is a little bit above that. So I'm going to stay here and kind of try to be a good boy now that I'm actually recording myself. I do want to go up, but I'm going to do 2 more doubles here. And then we'll kind of wrap things up for this session. So I'm going to kind of do another set here. Honestly, I was pretty happy with that. Sometimes, again, with my forearm issue, it takes me a little bit to warm up. Now I'm starting to kind of feel a little bit better. And then, I have, if you know anything about me, I got stubby Italian fingers. So that can be like an issue when it comes to like deadlifting grip, and certainly in the strict curl. There's a lot more of a grip component than you think. If you look at a lot of accomplished strict curlers may have backgrounds in arm wrestling or grip sport, or it's called arm lifting. So it's just something to consider. So I'm always kind of trying to improve my grip strength and my hold on the bar, because if the bar is rolling in your hands, you're dead in the water. So again, this is set number 2. This is 130 pounds and 20 pounds of chains. All right, last set of the day. It's going to be my last working set double. And then we'll kind of wrap things up. Always want to end on a high note. All right, that's all she wrote for today. Gonna log it in the Turnkey Coach. All right, so now this is an important part of the workout that's often overlooked. We're gonna log in our work. So I'm gonna head over to Turnkey Coach. And one of the things I love about Turnkey Coach is not only going to track your PRs, it's going to track your volume. You can upload videos in there. If you get a handsome fellow like myself as your coach, you'll also log in. You'll get form checks and video reviews and check-ins. So whether you just want a program or you want to all access all the bells and whistles of tracking your data, tracking your volume, tracking your form, getting game day advice for your warm-ups and attempts. All that stuff is great. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the list view, because I'm also a coach and an athlete, so I always have to log my work in the list view. And I'm going to log in my work here. So I did. So I'll just kind of show you like how this looks. So I kind of modified a little bit in terms of what was programmed for myself, just for you guys, so you guys can learn. But I did 2 sets of 3. So hopefully you guys will be able to see this. So I did 2 sets of 3 at 80 pounds. And then I did 2 sets of 3 at 110. I did 2 sets of 3 at 120. And I did 3 sets of 2 at 130 pounds. So that's kind of my workout. I can also check my history and see kind of how I'm doing. But overall, I'm very happy. I still have a lot of time. I'm competing on April 26th, so this was a good kind of dynamic day. In the next episode of the series, we're going to go over some supplemental exercises and kind of explain some different special lifts to kind of improve your strict curl. And then I'm really excited to kind of take you on my journey. So thank you guys for watching. If you guys liked the video, please share the video. Please subscribe. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.